Hey, welcome to the next edition of the Connor and Heffernan Show. My name is Mark. My co-host Montana here. Um, we're here to talk a little bit of football tonight. Um, break down the NFL standings a little bit. There are some interesting races going on so far. Obviously, in the AFC, you've got the likes of the Dolphins. You've got the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have all of a sudden won four straight and now are leading their division. Um, what are what are your thoughts on some of these races going on so far as we approach the midway of the season?
Yeah, well, let's break it down. Let's start with the AFC East. We've got the Dolphins sitting on top 5-1, Bills 4-2, Jets 3-3, and Patriots 1-5. This is what I'm going to say right now. If I'm being completely honest, if there's one team that I think is going to keep that consistency, it's by far the Dolphins. The only thing we have to look out for is, does Tua go down with injuries from time to time? Yes. Is their best running back out right now with an injury? Are they missing some of their key pieces right now? Yes. Could they potentially miss more due to some other unforeseen injury? Yes. But barring all of that, the Dolphins are going to stay on top. But I want to talk about the Bills and the Jets. I think that the Jets could very well go on top of the Bills if they're not careful. Now, yes, the Bills are looking great at 4-2. Jets are 3-3. We're not even going to talk about the Patriots at 1-5 because why would we? Come on, the writing's on the wall for the Patriots this season. But I think the Jets very well could find their way on top of the Bills. If the Bills do not play good, if the Bills play like they did last game, they are not staying at number 2 in the AFC East. I am sorry, because I think the Jets are going to start creeping back up. And I don't know, Aaron Rodgers, if he comes back, would it be before the playoffs? Probably not, because even that seems really unlikely. But have you seen him throwing without I mean, he's out there. There's
He he's definitely out there, and I was listening to um one show on the radio on the local station 1620 The Zone, and the unsportsmanlike conduct guys were asking, will he really be back? And they said something that I totally agree with. An Achilles injury is definitely tough to come back from. He may have been throwing all over the field, but that's not in-game action.
yeah, he might not be the most mobile quarterback, but he still moves around in the pocket. And if he it's different throwing the football around as opposed to taking a hit or trying to avoid taking a hit. So that is a really, I think that people are jumping the gun a little bit, but even without him coming back, that Jets team is good. That
They
Jets team is not bad.
they
So,
are they're starting to sneak back up.
and that
Um,
Bills team is inconsistent. I'm sorry, that's been their problem. Even though they beat the Jets or the Giants last week. I mean, did you watch? That was a terrible, terrible.
Terrible game.
They looked awful, and I'm sorry, they shouldn't have won that. There was a humongous miss. There was a gigantic missed call on Waller in the
Yep.
end. So I'm just like, the Giants should have at least had a chance in that game, and they were robbed of having at least a shot to win that game. So the Bills do not impress me currently.
No.
I like Josh Allen, but they're not a team that's my top team currently.
Yeah, the Bills have been incredibly inconsistent. Like you look at, say the points scored and points against, they have one of the best point differentials in the league, but that doesn't tell the whole story here. They struggled against a terrible Giants team last week when they were heavy favorites. They were a favorite by 2 or 3 scores going into that game. So the fact that they are this inconsistent is not going to do them very well, especially as we get later on into the season when we got more of these division races going. It's not, if they make the playoffs, they can't afford to play like that. They
No, I mean, no.
they have to step it up.
Well,
And
and you look at their next, like, yeah, you play the Patriots next, but then you do have a pretty tough schedule. I mean, you play the Bucks; they're not an easy team to beat, and then the Bengals. So they've got some back-to-back games that, if they sleepwalk, those teams are way better than the Giants. If they sleepwalk, or even if they just don't show up like they can, that's 2 L's on the schedule, and that doesn't look good.
no, it does not look good at all. And like we were alluding to, we got a team like the Jets here that is starting to sneak up in that division, and they're playing halfway decent football. And we were just touching up on it. if Aaron Rodgers comes back and he can perform at least, 3/4 of the way that he normally does while healthy, that team is dangerous still.
They're back in.
Zach Wilson, while he is not as dangerous, throwing down the field, Rodgers is extremely accurate throwing the ball downfield, and they got a buku load of weapons to throw it to on the outside. So the Jets, they could sneak into the playoffs here, and if they can get Rodgers back, they could be a dangerous team to talk about as we get into the postseason.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think they're one of those teams to watch out for, and I think that's even without Rodgers. But I do think that obviously with Rodgers, that gives them that boost. Looking up at the AFC North, we've got the Ravens in first at 4-2, Steelers in second at 3-2, and then the Browns in third at 3-2, and then the Bengals sitting in the back at 3-3. First and foremost, all four of these teams could very well have great endings to their seasons. All four of these teams could very well have 9 to 10 to 11 wins by the end of the year. So first and foremost, this is one of the more consistent divisions in the AFC, in my opinion. This is one of the more closer fought divisions this season. But I think the Ravens are going to stay on top. I think the Ravens look really solid. We saw a little more out of OBJ last game. That offense looks really good. That defense looks really solid. Lamar looks really good. I don't think he's talked about enough. I don't think he's ever been talked about enough, but I think he is playing really consistent, really dangerous football. And I think that's going to continue. I think we're going to see him continue. So I think the Ravens stay on top, but I think that Browns and that Bengals team will jump up in front of the Steelers. I think the Steelers, this might be a hot take, and I apologize for any Steelers fans. I think the Steelers finish last in the division. I think it's going to go Ravens and then Browns and then Bengals and then Steelers, honestly.
I don't think it's that hot of a take to say the Steelers finish last, in my honest opinion. Like, they have a negative 31 point differential. They've scored 79 points in 5 games and have allowed over 100. They've allowed 110 points. So they are not very consistent, even though they are 3-2. They just won last week. So we'll see. But I will tell you one thing. Yeah, the Ravens are playing good. But I'm telling you, watch out for the Cincinnati Bengals team. Once Joe Burrow and this offense catches fire, I think this Bengals team has what it takes to potentially get the division title, take it away from the Ravens. All these teams are within a game of one another. So, again, very tight race. I don't know if the Browns are going to have much of a say toward the end of the season. They're playing decent football right now, but will they be playing decent football, the next, 12 weeks? That remains to be seen. I think the two teams to watch out for in the AFC North are the Bengals and the Ravens.
And I'm totally with you. My thing with the Browns is I just think this Browns team, especially that win against the 49ers. Now, again, the 49ers did not look as good as they've looked in other performances in that game. But the Browns are a team that will punish you if you don't show up. And I think that is a team in the AFC that's going to go extremely far. And despite Deshaun Watson's whatever is going on, I mean, it's very obvious that something's gone on with all of the cases and stuff that's gone up against him. Whatever that may be, he is a phenomenal quarterback. He is a phenomenal player. And before everything happened, he was at the top. He was helping bring Houston back up before everything went down. He was starting to turn into a franchise quarterback. So I think that because of everything that's happened, and again, of course, that's what you're going to think about. That's what you see that in the headlines. That's what's going to draw your attention. But for me, he is one of the best quarterbacks in the AFC, and I think that he's underrated, and I think that he is going to help keep that team consistent and help lead that team and keep them up in that race. But again, Steelers, I think we can both agree they're the worst. They're the worst. Looking at the AFC South, we're looking at the Jags, which I believe would be 6-2 now, correct? With the win tonight, would that be? They're 5-2 on this, but I believe this is probably old what I'm looking at because I think they were 5-2 going into the game.
Let me pull up. I think they were 4-2 going into the
4-2. That would make
game.
sense because it's week 7, right? That would make sense then.
Yeah, let me check it out here. Yeah, yeah, with the win tonight, they are 5-2.
Okay, so they're 5-2 tonight, and then looking behind them, I mean 3-3 Colts, 3-3 Viking or Texans, and 2-4 Titans. What I will say is I am shocked the Titans are 2-4. I know that they don't have a great quarterback, but the weapons that team has, I am shocked that they are 2-4. But I'm going to give a hot take right now. If there's one team that I see picking it back up and coming up and competing against the Jags, it's not the Colts, it's the Texans. Stroud is balling. He is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You look at his stats, and I know we talked about this last season about Stroud versus Williams, who we thought was going to be better. Now, obviously, Williams didn't. No, it wasn't Williams.
Bryce Young.
Bryce, it was Young. That was who it was. Young. It was Young versus Stroud. And I think I said that I thought Young was going to have a better, but Stroud is like, not only is he having a good rookie season, he's having one of the best quarterback seasons in the. He's having a fantastic season.
He can win Rookie of the Year.
And who is he throwing? I mean, who does he really have as well? I mean, he is making it work with the weapons he has. Yes, there is talent in Texas, but not a lot of it's in Houston. Not a lot of that top end receiving talent in Houston. He's making it work with who he has.
Yeah, he's looking phenomenal. And he's got this team being very competitive. They're in a spot right now that they haven't been in the last 5, 6, 7 years. Like, they're playing competitive, complementary football. And they have a solid defense, too. And I tell you what, before you brought up the Texans as a team to watch, they're my team to watch, too. Like, you nailed it on the head because C.J. Stroud is having one of the better rookie seasons ever as a quarterback. Whether he keeps it up remains to be seen, but if he keeps going on this pace, he'll likely be Rookie of the Year. And this team may be in the playoffs, which is crazy. And I think last season when we were talking about C.J. Stroud versus Bryce Young, I said C.J. Stroud was likely going to have the best season.
You picked him, bro. You picked it, man. I wasn't buying it, but you picked it, and you hit it on the head because he's one of the. It's not just rookies. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now.
Yeah, it's awesome to see, and obviously I'm not a Texans fan, but it's awesome seeing another team sneak up here that could be a potential sleeper come playoff time.
Absolutely.
And then you're talking about the Titans, another team with a lot of talent, but they are 2-4 right now. And there are a lot of inconsistent teams in the NFL, obviously, but is it too much to say that the Titans possibly are the most disappointing team in the NFL with what they have?
I would say without a doubt they are. There is no team that has that talent that is that disappointing because the Broncos are disappointing, but they don't have that kind of marquee talent. There are the Vikings are the only team that I will say might be up there, but the Titans take the cake by far.
Yep, absolutely. I 100% agree. It's disappointing, so I'm sorry, all Titans fans. Maybe they'll turn the ship in the final 11 games. So let's move on to the AFC West. You've got the Chiefs sitting at 5-1. You've got the Raiders sitting at 3-3, Chargers 2-3, and Broncos 1-5. I'm going to kick things off with the Chargers here. They performed pretty disappointingly against in their game against the Cowboys. The Chargers had ample opportunities to go out and win that game, but they didn't. We'll talk about the Cowboys here coming up. But they're sitting at 2-3 right now. They have a lot of talent on their team as well. They needed that win, in my opinion, to kind of solidify themselves as a contender. Can they get a few more wins here or there? Yes. But obviously being set back to 2-3, especially with the Chiefs playing the way they are right now, the Chiefs very well could be the best team in the NFL at the moment. It really does hurt them. And then the Broncos don't need any introduction. Russell Wilson, and we've said this numerous times over the last few weeks. Russell Wilson, there is something wrong with his mental state right now. He is not the same guy, not the same quarterback as he was when the Seahawks were competing for Super Bowl championships, because he was consistently one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And they're sitting at 1-5 right now. And I get, they may not have all the talent. They still do have a semblance of talent on that team, but the mismanagement by the upper management, so the general manager, and then you've got Sean Payton, who has mismanaged things as well. Sean Payton has mismanaged more things than I had ever thought that he would, because over the course of his coaching tenure, you have not seen that from him. He has consistently been one of the better coaches in the NFL, and he has really struggled this year. Talk to us about the Broncos, man, because they could be the biggest disappointment in all of the NFL, aside from the Titans, of course.
Well, first of all, shout out for the run just now, bro. I was sprinting, man. I had to make it back in time. So shout out. That's the most exercise I've had all week. So shout out to the run down the hill, because that was intense. But talking about the AFC West, I mean, first and foremost, the Chiefs look really great. What I will say is, surprisingly enough, Patrick Mahomes to me is not the reason they look so great. Their defense is. All of a sudden, the Chiefs' defense, it's kind of flip-flopped. The offense is still good, but the defense to me is better than the offense this season almost, or at least they're really showing up and making these games more interesting, more than they ever have. So the Chiefs, obviously the best team, but the Raiders, again, I don't want to be a homer, but don't count them out. They've got the Bears this week. That's an easy W. That brings us to 4-3. That makes us the second best team in the AFC West by a lot, because I'm sorry, but the Chargers, me and you talked about them last day. We talked about them. We both hoped as much as we could that they would beat the Cowboys, and I thought they really would, but they couldn't get it done.
They had a lot of opportunities
They blew it. They blew it.
They blew it.
Game. It's like they shot themselves in their foot about 100 times until they didn't even have a foot anymore. They kept shooting themselves in the foot until their foot was completely gone. That's how many mistakes that team made. So I'm not giving the Chargers anything now. I talked them up a little bit last episode, but Chargers and Broncos are both okay, but the Broncos are in a league of their own. And for me, they've got to move on. Look to Trey Lance. Look to a quarterback. It's time to look at a quarterback first. We've talked about how they're mismanaged. Obviously, that needs to change as well. But looking at the team itself, look at the quarterback first. That's all I'm going to say about that. Look at the quarterback first. Don't look at the head coach, because I do think that Peyton can still help turn this around. It is really disappointing. I think that the idea that he would come in and fix it right away is definitely not happening. We're seeing that is not the case, but I don't think that it's not impossible for him to still help turn things around. So as disappointing as it must be for whoever out there is a Broncos fan, I don't even know who would be, whoever out there, again, I get it, but like, it's going to take time. They've been bad for the last almost 10 years now. Yep. It's been over 5, 6, 7 years since they've even been in the playoffs. It's been almost 10 years since they won the Super Bowl, and that was when they were last even in the playoffs. They have not been in the playoffs since they won the Super Bowl. So it speaks for itself. But I will say this, Chiefs and Raiders, I do think the Raiders, I'm not going to talk them up too much, but I do think they could finish with 10 to 11 wins. One thing I will say is Jimmy G is out this week. It's only the Bears, but Jimmy G's health has worried me the whole time. And the fact that it's only week 7 and he's out, that's a really bad sign, longevity-wise.
It's a bad sign for the Raiders.
It is, but I mean, when is it not? When do the Raiders not have bad signs? We're a team full of them.
Right, absolutely. And I tell you what, yeah, the Raiders may be playing the Bears, but I would not overlook that game one bit.
You're just hating.
Hey.
Raiders, man.
I'm just being a realist, man. Do not sleep on the Bears.
Well, the Bears are a squad that can show up. I will say that they can. They can.
And they're not without their starting quarterback too. So
And he's kind of heating up a little bit.
yeah, Justin Fields is really heating up a little bit, and we'll talk about the NFC here in a little bit. But yeah, so the Chargers, I'm not gonna hype them up anymore. Like you were saying, they have to go out and prove it from here on out if they want to be anything legitimate, because they had, like I said, ample opportunities to clinch that game up against the Cowboys, and they could not do it. And the Cowboys obviously right now are one of the more inconsistent 4-2 teams in the league. So that was the game that they needed to have in order to be in that conversation. It's like, okay, maybe they do have something to compete with the likes of the Chiefs.
It's not looking
But
like.
it's not looking like it right now. And I think the Chiefs right now, like you were saying, that defense has really showed out this season so far. They've only allowed 88 points in 6 games, which is really good. That's towards the top in the NFL. And their offense is still averaging like 28 points, 29 points a game. So they're a good complementary football team. So in my opinion, I think Kansas City is the clear-cut favorite in the division. Can a team like the Raiders, or dare I say it, the Chargers, if they get hot, sneak up and maybe make it a race toward the end of the year? They could, but they're going to need the Chiefs to slip up along the way in order to make things interesting.
I agree, and I think it's going to be really hard for a team like the Chiefs, defending Super Bowl champs, that heat up and stay hot, to lose that. So I think the Chiefs will remain on top, but I think the Raiders will still make a playoff push potentially. Switching over to the NFC, we've got the NFC East with the Eagles at 5-1, the Cowboys at 4-2, the Commanders at 3-3, and then the very sad Giants at 1-5. I'm not going to waste my breath. Yes, the Giants had their fluke playoff run last season, but they're not even going to sniff the playoffs this year. They're not even coming within 50. They're so far back. They need to just start focusing on next season. That's how far back they are. So I'm sorry. But every other team in that division is in it. The 3-3 Commanders, the 4-2 Cowboys, and the 5-1 Eagles. Who's my favorite? The Cowboys. No, the Eagles. Obviously the Eagles. My favorite is by far the Eagles. I think they're going to stay on. I don't have the Eagles dropping more than 2 to 3 games this season. I really don't. I don't think they're going to be a team that drops more than 2 to 3 games. Now, Cowboys Commanders is where it gets interesting. I do think the division is going to stay Eagles, Cowboys, Commanders, but I still think the Cowboys will finish with 9 to 11 wins. They're currently sitting at 3-3. They're not the best team in the league, but they're not the worst. Now let's look at the Cowboys, 4-2. Obviously, they pulled off a win against the Chargers, but they're not out of it yet. They still have a schedule of decently formidable opponents for the rest of the season, so they're not out of it yet. Now, do I think they're going to miss the playoffs? I'm not going to talk crazy. They're not going to miss the playoffs. They're going to make the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to beat the Eagles out. I think it's going to remain. I think this division is going to literally look the exact same by the end of the season, standings wise.
So I may be crazy saying this.
I want to hear it better.
This is going to be a hot take. My prediction is the Commanders finish above the Cowboys in the standings at the end of the year.
I hope you're right.
I do think the Commanders are pretty decent. The Cowboys are, while they do have a good defense, in my opinion, are still one of the more inconsistent football teams in the league right now, because they are among the most penalized in the league.
Yeah.
They're very undisciplined. And like you were alluding to, they have a lot of formidable opponents on their schedule yet. So there's opportunities for them to pick up, 4 or 5 losses right there. They need to clean things up if they want to, keep pace with the Eagles. Again, the Eagles, they looked good last year. They look really good this year. And they were a lot of people's Super Bowl pick at the beginning of the year. And I can kind of see that their defense, while it is not as good as it has been, their offense is really good. So,
Yeah.
again, they're one of those teams that, yeah, their defense is not as good, but they're a damn good football team.
Oh yeah. No,
And
you're right, bro. They are.
and
They've built that too.
yeah, they've built that within the last 2 or 3 years, and they had the league's best record last year. And it's kind of crazy on how fast this Eagles organization has kind of turned things around to the point where they are now, because they very well could finish, with the best record in the NFC. They've got the Detroit Lions to contend with there, and I think the Lions is going to have a really good conversation for potentially having the best record in the NFC. We'll touch on them here in a moment. But yeah, the Eagles, bar none, are the best team in the NFC East. And I'm going to just say, watch out for the Washington Commanders, because I do think they have good pieces on offense and defense. And I think they can leapfrog the Cowboys toward the end of the year.
All right. I think that's a great take. I hope you're right, because I would love to see the Cowboys fall even more. Not to be an anti-Cowboy person, but I think for me it's not even that I just dislike them. It's just they're that team. They're the team that can't stay on top. They're very inconsistent. They're all over the place. I like that take. I hope it happens. I do see them maybe still finishing in that second place, but I can see the Commanders definitely finding that push. Moving over to the NFC North. Already touched on them a little bit, but we'll touch on them a little more, because since when are the Lions 5-1? And then let me read you the rest of this division and just tell me, does this sound like their record, or should this be the Lions' record instead? Usually, Cowboys. Gosh, I don't want to my mind's stuck on them. Jeez, no, Packers. 2-3, Vikings 2-4, Bears 1-5. That sounds like the Lions' record usually at this point in the season for the last like 20 years. But now they're 5-1, and the Packers, the Vikings, the Bears, we expect that too. But let's just say the Packers and the Vikings, I am shocked. Not so much by the Packers, but I'm shocked by the Vikings that they're still sitting where they're at. We've talked a couple of episodes that we both think they can, but I don't know if they can figure it out at this point.
I'm with you. And the Packers are my boys, obviously. They're dear to my heart. But again, I'm not shocked that they are where they are right now, because they're still trying to coach up Jordan Love to being the quarterback that they think that he can be. This is his first year starting. I was expecting, some bumps in the road. I wasn't expecting much. If they even made the playoffs, I would have been shocked. I'm waiting.
Never know.
Yeah, you never know. Jordan Love can get hot, and that team could find their way into a wild card or something. I don't think they're going to beat out the Lions for this division, because I think the Lions they're legit. Their offense is really good. Their defense is really good. They are very disciplined on both sides of the ball. They're one of the least penalized teams in the NFL. So they right now are my dark horse Super Bowl pick at the end of the year. Just by the way they're playing. Jared Goff is having a year where he could possibly be up for the MVP. So again, they're playing complimentary football. Let's go to the Vikings, though. The Vikings on paper have the most talent of anybody in the NFC North, yet they're sitting at 2-4. Talk about inconsistency, because they got off to a 0-2, 0-3 start to start the year, so they already started in a hole. And they're sitting at 2-4. They won last week. But again, they're not consistent. And with a team with as much talent, with Kirk Cousins at quarterback, Justin Jefferson, you expect that team to be 5-1, maybe 4-2 at this point in the year, and they're not.
Anything but that. They're the exact opposite. They're one of the worst teams in the NFC. I mean, they've got one of the worst records in the NFC. So
that's why I've been going around, like, I've talked to Vikings fans and they're like, "Oh, we have the team to win the division." And I'm like, "Yeah, on paper. Let's see what they do on the field." I'm right.
Yeah, you are.
Um like I'm like, you may have the most talent on the field, but if you are inconsistent, that talent's only going to get you so far.
Yeah, you're only as good as you can stay consistent. If you can't stay consistent, even if you have the star power, it doesn't matter. You have to stay consistent. And the NFL season, it's no NBA season, but it's long. You've got to stay consistent. If you're making the playoffs, more than just 17. I mean, it's a long season. You have to be ready from August to, if you make it to the Super Bowl, February. So you have to stay alive for a long time, and a lot of teams cannot do that. And it's no hate to those teams because it's just a really difficult thing to do. But I don't have the Vikings or the Bears being able to do that. The Packers maybe can figure it out, but I think the only playoff team in this division is the Lions. I think that that's the only team, definitely, that is a shoe-in for the playoffs. But I share your dark. I think they're gonna win the NFC, or at least be in the NFC Championship for sure. And I think they could be a Super Bowl. I share that, bro. That's not really a hot take because of how they're playing right now. Like, it is because of who they've been the last, like, 20 years. But with how they're playing now, you think they're a brand new team that's just started this last, like, season.
Yeah,
It's insane. Insane.
absolutely insane. And people called me crazy at the beginning of the year, saying that, like, I was saying that the Lions could potentially win this division based on the way they finished last year. They they finished the year really good and looked kind of like they do right now. They started off the season kind of slow last year. It took them a while to get it rolling, but they're the ones that knocked the Packers out of the playoffs at the end of the year. I will never forget that.
Ooh,
Um,
what an ending for like, come on. That was revenge.
for
I'll just say that was revenge for all the times he whooped up on them, because
last
the
the
last laugh.
the last laugh, the last game as a Packer, and he throws 2 interceptions,
That just
and
that just is his career there, though.
it in big moments he's led a lot of comebacks, but in a lot of big moments he has failed to perform. We look at I know we're going down the past here, but you look at the games against the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. The Packers played them in back-to-back seasons in the NFC Championship. And Aaron Rodgers looked stagnant. He couldn't do anything against that 49ers defense. And there were things that were open that he could have taken advantage of. We still had Devontae Adams, let's
Mhm.
not forget. Aaron Jones at running back. There were things that you could do. And again, inconsistencies plagued him in big moments. Yeah, he's an MVP winning quarterback. I'm not hating on him for that. Yeah, he brought really good memories to the Packers organization. But with all that talent, he still only mustered to win one Super Bowl in his entire time as a Green Bay Packer, which is incredible to me, considering the Packers had some of the better teams in recent memory in the NFL. They went 15-1, 15-2 in one of his seasons, and they lost out in the second round in the playoffs. So again, it's inconsistencies, and inconsistencies are plaguing, the Chicago Bears, the Minnesota Vikings, obviously the Packers, because they're trying to slowly find their way. But yeah, the Lions, they are legit. I think they still keep it up. I can see the Lions winning 12, 13 games this year, and I don't think that's that crazy. People may think so. This is not the Lions team of the last several years. This is a very, very new, rejuvenated Lions team. And, you know, I'm not a fan of them, but I'm a fan of parity. So let's have them win the division, because that's going to really throw everybody for a loop.
No, agreed, bro. I think that's what we need. That's what we need as football fans and sports fans. So I'm excited to see that develop. Looking over at the NFC South, we've got the Buccaneers at 3-2, the Falcons at 3-3, the Saints at 3-4, and the team with the worst record, the Panthers at 0-6. Panthers aren't going to get anything done. They're dead in the water, obviously. I think that's pretty obvious. I mean, 0-6, that would be like the greatest comeback ever to turn that around. That they can't even, there's no way that there's just no, that's it. Their season's done. It's not looking good. Saints, Falcons, and Bucks are all like right there. They're super close, but I do have to say that I've got to give it to the Bucks. I do think the Bucks will remain on top of that division. They're currently on top at 3-2. I think they'll remain on top. The Saints lost tonight against the Jaguars as we record this episode, but I think the Saints will edge out the Falcons by the end of the season. I do think the Saints will finish second behind the Buccaneers. And will the Falcons have a terrible record? No, I think they'll win 9 to 10 games, but I don't think they're finishing second in that division. I do think the Saints team has enough talent and enough leadership in a quarterback like Carr to figure it out and string along those victories and finish second in that division and make the playoffs, make a wild card.
Yeah, I don't think that's too far-fetched at all. Even with their loss tonight, I think their season is still very much alive. Everybody's season in that division, aside from the Panthers, is still alive. And I tell you what, I'm just going to go on a Panthers rant here. I got into an argument with a bunch of Panthers fans on Twitter this offseason. And they're like, man, we're so glad we got rid of Matt Rule. Matt Rule ruined this organization. Matt Rule was the least of that organization's worries because they've been an organization for just over 20 years now, and they've had 7 winning seasons in those, 24, 25 years, however long that they've been an organization. And you got all these Panthers fans saying that they're a flashy organization. I don't think they're terribly flashy. They've made it to a Super Bowl, and that's it. And they're one of the more inconsistent organizations in the NFL, and they're showing that this year. Albeit they have a rookie at quarterback right now, but that don't mean anything. They're a bad football team. And I'm going to say this. The last 3 years that Rule was head coach, they were better than this 0-6 football team by far.
By far. Not even close. People will just wake up and choose to be haters, and it can be for innocent reasons, just as like being super passionate about that team. But a lot of people will make crazy claims, and Matt Rule is a team builder. And I will say this, team builders do way better in college than they do in the NFL.
Yeah.
So his style just works way better in college.
Well,
and we're seeing that. Look at the Huskers. I mean, we've got we're 500 right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. And you look at coaches, I'm not comparing, people don't jump on me for doing this, but I'm not comparing Matt Rule to Nick Saban. Nick Saban was in the NFL for a short stint, and he struggled mightily. And he's turned out to be one of, if not the best college football coach ever. And that just goes to show that a lot of college coaches that want to go get that experience in the NFL, more often than not, don't succeed. And Rule was one of those cases, but his teams still won a few ball games during the year. They were competitive. And I'm just going to say this, if there's any of those Panthers fans listening to us, it wasn't Matt Rule's fault that, the Panthers organization is where it's at. Look at your upper management. Look at all your coaches, because obviously player development is not good, and they haven't drafted particularly well the last few years. So, again, you got more problems than just your head coach. Do not throw all your eggs in one basket and say it's that. They're they're inconsistent. They've been an inconsistent organization since they became an organization some 20 plus years ago. And they have one season here or there and they sneak up. But that's my Panthers rant. They're obviously not going anywhere. They're probably going to get the number one draft pick at the end of the year. But yeah, let's transition to the Saints here. Saints, again, with Carr, especially when he gets healthy, I think the Saints are going to be a pretty dangerous football team to look out for. They have the potential to be up there with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the end of the year. I do think the Buccaneers get at least a couple, three more losses on their slate by the end of the year. I do think the Saints will hang within a game of them though. Toward the end of the year, I do think the Saints will get hot. I think the schedule allows it for them to get hot. But they need Jordan Carr healthy. They absolutely need him healthy if they want to succeed at the level that they want. And then we'll talk the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons they're an okay football team. I think their quarterback is what? Is it his name is Ritter, isn't it? Desmond Ritter?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Desmond
Yeah,
Ritter.
it is Desmond Ritter.
Okay, so Desmond Ritter has been he's been okay at times this year, but he's been very inconsistent at quarterback. Obviously, the Falcons have one of the better rushing attacks in the NFL, but they're going to need Ritter to step up his play a little bit more if the Falcons want to be a potential playoff contender at the end of the year. They're in a decent spot because they're 3-3 right now. Buccaneers are 3-2. Nobody is running away in that division. So the Falcons need to adjust a little bit and put Desmond Ritter in a position to succeed a little bit more. And I do think the Falcons have the potential to be a pretty dangerous team down the stretch for the NFC South. What are your thoughts on the Falcons?
I think they're a good team. I think that they definitely have potential to be a team to talk about down the stretch. I think that Saints and the Falcons are both teams that are pretty equal. I give the Saints a little more of an edge, but I think they're pretty equal in the situations they're in, trying to make their way back to the playoffs, trying to make their way back up. They've both been in the Super Bowl within the last 15 years. So I think those are two teams that are trying to find their identities again. And I think both are starting to do that. And I think we could see both teams make a push. But I definitely think for me, I'm giving the edge to the Saints. And that goes for the quarterback. And it's not just because he's a former Raider. Got to show a little former Raider love. But I also just think he is a really solid quarterback that will get the job done. So I think it's going to end with Bucks on top and then Saints and Falcons. But you never know. And then our final division is the NFC West. Obviously, 49ers 5-1 on top. Following behind them is the Seahawks at 3-2, and then 3-3 Rams and the 1-5 Cardinals. Not going to waste my breath on the Cardinals. They are not making the playoffs. They will win a couple more games, but they are not making the playoffs. What gets interesting, and again, 49ers on top. 49ers are going to finish on top. They had a really disappointing game, their last game, but they're going to be fine. You know what I mean? Even the best teams will drop one. They'll have a couple of sleepers. They'll have sloppy games. You need to lose a few to get yourself on the right track to really win it all. So they needed that loss. They needed to be brought back down to earth. They're going to bounce back. They're the best team in the NFL, in my personal opinion, top to bottom currently. So 5-1, 49ers finish on top. Where it gets interesting is the Seahawks and the Rams. The Seahawks woke up and decided to start making noise again. They did not have a great season last year, but now they're really starting to make a push again. Stafford looks solid. That team looks really solid. They have a really hungry offense, and that defense, don't forget about that defense. That defense is solid. So even though they're behind the Seahawks right now, I think the Rams are going to finish second in the division, and I think they're going to make the playoffs again. And I think they might make a deep playoff push. I really do. I think they could be a team that could shock some people.
Yeah, the Rams are a team right now that they are playing pretty well. Their defense is solid. Stafford's starting to figure things out. They got off to a pretty slow start. I I don't think they're good enough to beat out the 49ers. I do agree with the sentiment that the 49ers right now are bar none, even with their loss last week, the best team in the NFL. They have 184 points scored and 87 points allowed, which allows for a 97-point differential, which I believe would make it the top in the NFL. And it's for right reason. They've got a very, very good opportunistic defense, as well as their offense is really good as well. Brock Purdy is having himself a really good year. So, yeah, the 49ers should be and will likely be the favorite to win that division. You look at the Seahawks. The Seahawks are starting to sneak up a little bit too. Their defense is pretty damn solid as well. And their offense is doing just enough in some of these games to allow them to have a record over 500. And they could be a potential playoff push team at the end of the year, along with the Rams. That's going to make for a very interesting race between these two teams for a potential wild card spot. And then you got a team like the Cardinals. Again, terrible football team. And the organization is just they're in shambles right now based on what they dealt with. Their coach upped and left and went to Costa Rica or something and left him in a very, very difficult spot. Their existing head coach now is left with a giant mess that he has to clean up, and it's very tough. The Cardinals, I don't know, even with the Panthers at 0-6, the Cardinals might be my pick for worst team in the NFL altogether because they're not doing anything.
No, they're not.
And I do think the Panthers, will they stay, will they go 0-17? I don't think so. I think the Panthers will be a team to win, maybe 3-4 games. I think they'll find a way to win 4 at least this year to kind of avoid being that number 1 draft pick team, even though you probably want to because you're likely going to get Caleb Williams. Let's be real. But I do think the Cardinals will finish worse at the end of the year than the Panthers. Yeah, it's top 3 teams very interesting. When you include the Cardinals, not very interesting at all. They are what they are though. But yeah, let's transition over a little bit here. We'll go to a specific game now, and the Philadelphia Eagles are going up against the Dolphins. It is one of the marquee, if not the marquee matchup of the weekend. 2 5-1 teams. Dolphins are really good offense. Tua Tagovailoa is having an incredible year at this point. But so is Jalen Hurts. What are your thoughts on this matchup? I think this has a very good opportunity to be probably the best game of the season on, let's see, Sunday night. Is it Sunday night? Yeah, Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, so I do think it is going to be a marquee matchup, obviously. I would say for me, I'm going to give the edge to the Eagles because I do think that defense is going to be able to shut down Tua in the offense, as great as that Miami offense is. Because let's be honest, the Bills beat Miami, and the Eagles have a better defense than the Bills at this moment. The Eagles have had some tough matchups. They've not always played the best defense, but top to bottom, they have the better defense. And I think they're going to show up and show out against Miami and shut that offense down. And I think that Eagles offense is going to run up and down on that Miami defense. Now, I don't mean they're going to run the score up and blow them out, but I do think they're going to score with ease. I think that this Eagles team is going to handle business because I think they're the more complete team. So final score prediction for me, I've got to give a 2-touchdown win to the Eagles, 28-14. And that's not just because I need to win in fantasy this week and I need Jalen Hurts to go off, but that's partly the reason. So 28-14, let me hear your prediction, bro. It might be a little less biased than mine.
Yeah. So mine's going to be the opposite. I do think the Dolphins will do enough to knock off the Eagles. I think Tua is going to put up some decent numbers. I think Tyreek Hill is going to put up some decent numbers as well. Give me the Dolphins in this one, 27-20.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. Little opposite. One of us is going to be right. That's the best part about us picking different things. One of us is going to get it right. For you, who do you think is going to be the difference maker for the Dolphins?
I think it's going to be whether Tyreek Hill can find separation against that defense. If Tyreek Hill can get separation, if that offensive line can protect Tua, and Tua can get the ball to Tyreek, I think Tyreek is going to be the big difference here.
Yeah, I think. Well, he is their guy. He is the best receiver in the NFL currently. He is top to bottom that guy.
Yeah, he is at this moment, but I don't think they've played a defense yet like they're going to face against the Eagles on Sunday night. So that's my huge key. Obviously, Tua's going to need to limit the turnovers. He hasn't turned the ball over that much this year, but against a team like the Eagles, their defense is very opportunistic. They'll feast on whatever mistakes you give them. Tyreek Hill needs to find holes in that defense, and Tua needs to get good protection from his offensive line. I think if they can do two of those things, I think both Tua and Tyreek can have a pretty big game Sunday night.
I'm with you. And again, Tua is a difference maker, and Tyreek is. They're definitely two of the best offensive players we've seen in the last 10 years, and that the fact that they're teamed up. Hot take. Patrick Mahomes is great, but I think Tua is a better quarterback for Tyreek. I think that Tua and Tyreek could potentially be more successful statistics-wise than Mahomes and Tyreek were. Now, that's also because I do think Tyreek obviously is a marquee and a highlighted player to target for Tua, but Tua has other weapons. He picks Tyreek for a reason because Tyreek is that guy. So I like that pick. I think he'll be the difference maker. No matter what the score, Tyreek and Tua will always be difference makers together.
I think, yeah. Let's transition over to some college football now. And we've got a pretty good slate of college football games going on. We'll start off with Penn State and Ohio State. And it is a top 10 matchup. It is at 11 a.m. on Big Fox. It's big noon kickoff, which surprises me. I would have expected a game of this caliber to be a 7 o'clock kickoff on like NBC or ABC, potentially a college game day destination game. What are your thoughts on this Penn State Ohio State matchup? I'm kind of curious as to what you think. I do think, as things stand right now, I think Penn State has what it takes to prove to the world tomorrow morning, especially at 11 a.m., because it's hard to get up for an 11 a.m. kickoff. I think Penn State has what it takes to knock off Ohio State in their house.
I think that's what's going to happen. I think we're going to see Penn State move up, and we're going to see, because Ohio State's third right now. I think we're going to see Penn State's going to move up to that top four, and Ohio State's going to. I think we're going to see a swap. We're going to see those teams swap. I don't think it's going to be a game that's going to be handed to Penn State where they just are handed this win. It's going to be a hard-fought victory. But I think that this Penn State team, I think it's going to be close in the first three. And then I think this Penn State team pulls away and wins by 10 points. I think they figure it out. And actually give me this instead. Give me, instead of 10 points, give me one touchdown, because I think this is going to go down to the wire. Give me one touchdown separating this game. I've got Penn State on top, 35-28 with a late drive touchdown to win the game and avoid overtime. They're going to be tied. It's going to be late. They're going to win on a late drive touchdown, 35-28. Give me Penn State. What about you?
I like that prediction. I also do have Penn State winning. I have them winning by 10 points. I do think they'll find a way to get a late game touchdown to kind of solidify the deal. Give me Penn State winning 27-17.
I like that. I like that, man. See, the reason I went down, because I was 10-2, the reason I went down is because I do think that Ohio State isn't going to let it be separated by more than 7. I really don't. As much as, honestly, Penn State, in my personal opinion, is top to bottom a better team than Ohio State. Again, top to bottom, when you look at them top to bottom, I give it to Penn State of who the better team is. I really think that Ohio State, as good as they are, they have not had a matchup. They have not had an opponent as formidable as Penn State yet. Penn State is the best team in the Big Ten.
They're at least one of the best teams in the Big Ten. I'll still give that key to Michigan.
You think so?
I think Michigan, top to bottom, is still the top team in the Big Ten.
Good pick.
I do think Penn State has what it takes, though, to kind of change that narrative this year. Obviously, Penn State's got to go beat Michigan, but yeah, I do think as far as consistency goes, and you saying that the Ohio State Buckeyes have not had a formidable opponent, I would consider Notre Dame kind of that formidable opponent that they faced earlier in the year. Because Notre Dame is a tough, gritty football team.
They're definitely not an easy, and they just beat USC, so they are a solid team. I would just say that when we're talking like top tier, top 10 team, this to me is their first, but Notre Dame is right up there too. They definitely, and they're sitting at 15 right now. So
yeah,
they're in there. They're in the mix for sure.
Yeah, I do think this may be Ohio State's toughest test, especially at 11 a.m. for a game of this caliber. And I get big noon kickoff wants the bigger games because you get a lot of your viewership in the early window. And a lot of that's true, but again, it's a top 10 matchup. You would expect it to be under the lights on ABC with Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler calling. So yeah, I do think Penn State does enough to beat the Buckeyes. I do think they score maybe a field goal late to kind of pull away a little bit. And I do think Penn State comes out with a 10-point win, 27-17. We shall see. We both have Ohio or Penn State winning. So hopefully that comes to fruition and we'll both be 1-0 on that pick.
Oh yeah.
Let's transition over to UCF Oklahoma. And Oklahoma came off a very, very emotional game against Texas in a pretty classic Red River rivalry. And yeah, they're really good. I think their defense is really good. Their offense has kind of showed up over the last couple of weeks. Then you got UCF. UCF is putting up a lot of offensive numbers as well, but I don't think they have the caliber of player to keep up with this Oklahoma team. I mean, we saw it when Oklahoma went to Cincinnati. Cincinnati still has a lot of talent on that team, and Oklahoma still went into a pretty tough environment and pulled out a 14-point win. I think we're going to see a lot of the same here, but I think the spread's going to be upped a little higher here. Give me Oklahoma winning 34-13.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, here's what I will say. Oklahoma is no easy out, and they never are. They have been one of the best teams in college football pretty much always. They've been one of the more consistent programs. as much as us as Husker fans, especially when we played them in the Big, as much as we hate that, I mean, the Big 12 days or even the Big 8 days, bro. I mean, throw back to that. I mean, we've been facing them for years and hating them for years, but they are one of the better teams, and they have been. So I've got to give them that. I think that Oklahoma, I think they're going to finish. We gave our top four I think it was 2 episodes ago. I think our predictions for the playoffs. I don't think I had them in my top four. I do have them finishing in my top four now. I think that they have proven that they can be consistent. The biggest issue with Oklahoma is we've seen them blow some pretty easy games they should not have blown the last couple of seasons. They're not going to do that this season. Give me Oklahoma 42-14. Okay.
Oh,
UCF scores. They're going to score a couple touchdowns. They're going to have a couple of stops, but I do think that Oklahoma is legit this season, so I have them scoring 42, and I have them continuing this push to maybe the college football playoffs.
that's a good pick. Very solid pick. We both have Oklahoma winning. The biggest question is, after that win against Texas last week, will Oklahoma potentially sleepwalk in this game? And at this moment, they really can't afford to, because I think a loss to UCF tomorrow could very well end their chances for the college football playoff, even though they'll likely be playing Texas in the Big 12 championship, and they could beat Texas again. I do think having a loss like that on their resume could potentially knock them out, especially if we have 4 teams undefeated in our top 4. So it'll be very interesting. I don't foresee Oklahoma sleepwalking at this one. I do think they'll come ready to play. I think we both do. So we shall see, and we'll obviously talk more about the Sooners our next episode. Let's transition over to another game here. We got the number 16 Duke Blue Devils. Very, very solid team. Really, really good. Their defense is pretty dang solid. Then you got Florida State. Florida State has a really good offense. Their defense isn't as good on paper right now as the Duke Blue Devils. Do the Duke Blue Devils have what it takes to potentially beat Florida State on ABC tomorrow night?
I don't want to say hot take because I don't think this is a super hot take, but I think that the Florida State team has a deceiving record because they haven't had the hardest. You look at their schedule, and you're not going to hate on them for who they've played, but I really, other than LSU, which was a ranked win, I don't think they've played any other ranked team and beat them yet. I don't think they have any ranked win other than that LSU win. And again, is that all? I mean, there's so many good football programs that you don't see a number next to because the number only goes up to 25. After that, you don't see it next. Yeah, there's plenty of teams that go down to 100, but you only see 1 through 25. But for me, Florida State is not going to be ready for Duke. I think they're going to sleepwalk, and they're not a team that should sleepwalk. I think they're going to sleepwalk into Duke, and I think that Duke is going to come out on top. Give me Duke. Give me Duke. I think it's going to be a decently low-scoring game. Give me Duke 21-14.
Good pick. Good pick. I also think Duke pulls off the upset against Florida State. Duke is very solid, both on offense and defense. Yeah, give me Duke winning 27-24. I think Duke walks it off to end the game. And who knows, we could be talking a top 10 Duke team in our next episode, which is going to be crazy. And after a win like that, they could be the favorite to win the ACC, which I did not foresee happening at all. So yeah, very interesting game. But yeah, I think Duke will pull off the upset on national television on ABC with Kirk Herbstreit on the call.
Anyways, like I was saying, they're separated, but it's one loss or less. For me, there's teams like North Carolina that, yeah, they're undefeated right now, but I don't have them making the playoffs. But a team like Texas is not dead in the water yet. A team like Oregon is not dead in the water yet. We could very well see them in the top 4 by the end of the season. So for me, it's really only the Texas and the Oregons that could really make a jump. But even a team like Oregon State or Utah, they're in the mix. Those are kind of my dark. Oregon State and Utah are my dark horses for maybe continuing their success and breaking at least into the top 10. But if you talk about teams that are right outside that could still make a push, again, I definitely think that Texas and Oregon could still make it to the top 4 or at least make a push. What about you?
I think Texas and Oregon absolutely have what it takes to find their way back to the top 4. Obviously, they're going to have to keep it up the remainder 6-7 weeks, and then they're likely both going to be playing in the conference championship game if they can stay on their pace. But they're going to also need teams in front of them to lose. They're going to need a little bit of help to kind of get that initial push. Because I'm going to tell you this, if we have 5 teams in, say, the top 5 or 6 that are undefeated, Texas and Oregon are going to get kept out. And I don't think that's too hot of a take. I think Texas would be just on the outside looking in. Oregon would just be on the outside looking in. I think they would potentially be, ranked 6th, 7th, after all said and done, which I think both schools will kind of take that, because that would mean they're playing in a New Year's 6 bowl. So, yeah, I do think if any parity happens up, say in the top 7, I do think Texas and Oregon will find their way back up.
It's possible. With only having one loss on their record and all these teams being separated by such little amounts, I really think that we could see those teams make their way up. So I think, but again, those are really the only ones that I think will make it a big jump. But we might see the Utahs, the Oregon States at least break the top 10.
Yeah. I think Utah and Oregon State could very well break the top 10. And who knows? Oregon State still has to play Oregon this year. So if Oregon State can find a way to win that game and they can kind of make a push toward the Pac-12 championship, watch out for Oregon State, because they could be a team kind of like a TCU was last year. Nobody expected them to make it, but they could be a team maybe on the bubble and on the cusp of making the college football playoff if things fall in the right place.
Agreed. Without a doubt, bro.
Yeah, they're overall very solid team, and Utah is too. I think Utah is another one of those teams where if they're in the same boat as Oregon State, if they can go out and win, say, the remainder of their games, win the Pac-12, they're in the same boat. They could find a way from number 14 all the way up into the top 4 if they can finish the season hot. So yeah, it's going to be interesting over the course of the next 7 or so weeks to see how everything shakes out, because all these teams are separated by such little margin. It's going to make for a fun race. I'm excited.
Me too. I think it's going to be exciting. I think we have plenty of great college football left, and obviously we will touch back in next episode. But sticking with a little more college football, we're about done for this episode, but finishing up with our football segment for the evening, we're going to talk about a little Husker football. So take us away, bro. Let's get into it.
So Nebraska is in homecoming against Northwestern. Currently Nebraska is an 11.5 point favorite. I think that's a pretty good number. Northwestern, while they are 3-3, they have struggled against most anybody that they've played. And Nebraska is starting to figure things out, both on offense and defense, as to what they can do. The defense has been solid all year for Nebraska. I think Nebraska's defense is going to stifle Northwestern's offense, And I do think Nebraska's offense is going to put up some points against this defense because this is a Northwestern defense that gave up 20 late to Howard. So give me Nebraska winning this one. I think Nebraska scores a pretty decently high number in this game. Give me Nebraska 35 and Northwestern 13.
I like that. What I will give you is the Howard point you just made, because that was right at the top of my dome, bro. I was like, I'm gonna bring up the fact that they barely beat Howard. And so what are they, 2-3 Howard, something like that? Come on now. I mean, the Huskers, as much as we have not been a great team, we are not a Howard. We are not a Howard. I'm going to say that right now. We have the talent to compete.
Yep.
Give me the Huskers 42-10. 42-10. Put the Big Ten on notice. Put everyone on notice. I know it's just Northwestern, but 42-10 would be nice. Give me 42-10. Huskers on top.
It would be nice. Any win that Nebraska gets, like, it will put them at 4-3, 2 wins away from bowl eligibility, which in a first year is incredible. Matt Rule is already off, and I alluded to this in the last episode. Matt Rule is off to his best year one start at, all his other year ones at Temple and at Baylor. They had 1 win that entire year. Now they're at 3, and they've got ample opportunities to get more of these wins. And I think Northwestern is going to be a start of, dare I say it, a 3-game winning streak, because I do think they win next week, and I do think they win the week after that against Michigan State.
We share that prediction.
Yeah, so I do think this is going to be a start to a pretty lengthy winning streak, and we will be talking here in just a few weeks, a 6-3 Nebraska football team who is also 4-2 in conference play, which that would put them very much so in the race to potentially go to Indianapolis in a season which people thought was lost after that Colorado game. So this season's not over yet. And no. I think Harburg is starting to slowly figure things out, how to get things done through the air as well as his legs. Obviously, he's the leading carrier on this Nebraska football team right now. But yeah, I'm 100% on the Rule train. Obviously, I rep Nebraska all the time. I do think Rule and the staff will have this team ready, and I think they're hungry after a bye week, and I think Nebraska will put up a big number, whether it's going to be year 42 or my 35. I think they're going to score a few points. I think they'll force a few turnovers as well. That gives the offense a better position to score on Saturday afternoon. So go Big Red. I hope that transpires, and we'll be talking. We'll be talking about an above 500 Nebraska football team here in a couple of weeks. I will be gone next week. I will be in Colorado, so there will not be an episode next week. But let's transition over to a little MLB talk. So both championship series are underway, and the Rangers, they took a 2-0 series lead. Well, now that 2-0 series lead is diminished. The Astros ended up beating the Rangers twice at the Rangers ballpark, and now the series is tied 2-2. How do you think the rest of this series transpires? Do you think the Rangers ran out of gas, and do you think this is going to be the series that the Astros actually take over, or do you think the Rangers have what it takes to maybe force this to potentially go to a game 7 and maybe win it in 7? What are your thoughts?
So here's my thing. I would totally give you that. I think the Rangers are alive and well, but the fact that the Astros just won 10-3 this last game, I think that shows that they woke up a little bit. I think that we are going to see them win this in 6. I don't think it's going to go to a game 7. I think we're going to see Astros on top in 6. I want like I said last episode, I've been to a couple Rangers games. I don't hate them. Like they're a team that like I'm indifferent. I'd root for them, whatever. But like I just don't think they're going to be able to get it done. I think this Astros team just has too much. I think they win it in 6 and continue on to the final.
I like that pick. I also do have the Astros in 6 as well. I think the Astros have woken up after being down 2-0. Now it's a new series. They just got to win 2 more games. They're looking to go 2-0 in the next 2. So, I think the Astros will get it done. Let's transition over to the other series going on. The Phillies Diamondbacks. The Phillies are another team that went up 2-0, but the Diamondbacks showed a little grit tonight and walked it off. How about these Diamondbacks? Do you think they can potentially make this a very competitive series with the Phillies, or do you think the Phillies, this was just an anomaly, and do you think the Phillies pull away and win it maybe in 5?
I think the Phillies will drop one more, but I still think they'll win. I think this Diamondback team might win the next one just off of gas and off of steam, but I think this Phillies team is still going to win. I guess that would make it what? Give me the Phillies in 6. Give me the Phillies in 6.
Okay.
Both series 6. Give me both. Give me both of these series ending in 6, and then we'll see Phillies Astros in the World Series final.
I agree with that pick 100%. I do think the Diamondbacks will find a way to tie up the series. I don't think they have enough gas in the tank to beat the Phillies. The way the Phillies have been playing, yeah, they played like crap tonight. They had 1 run on 3 hits. But you got to chalk it up to the Diamondbacks pitching. They did really good at pitching against Bryce Harper and that entire batting lineup tonight. So, yeah, I do think the Diamondbacks pick up 1 more, but I do think the Phillies have just a little too much firepower for the Diamondbacks to compete in this series any longer than 6. So, yeah, Phillies Astros is looking like a potential. Yep, looking like the World Series this year. Obviously, as we transition into November, because that'll be our next episode. We'll likely be talking the World Series, and it'll be the Phillies and Astros. So we'll have a lot more to talk about with those two teams. If they get in, we could see some funny things and see the Diamondbacks pull it off somehow. We'll see. We'll have more on the MLB in our next episode here in a couple of weeks. Do you have any other finishing thoughts?
Yeah, so my final finishing thoughts. When we see you guys next episode, we are going to be going live. I don't know if we'll be going live every episode, but I know that next episode we will be going live. I cannot tell you guys what time that will be, what time we'll go live, but I'll advertise. Once we set that up, I'll advertise what time we'll be going live so everyone knows. But our next episode will be live. It might be PM, it might be AM. Just look out for it. Either way, look out for it, and we're excited to come back and give you guys more sports. In the meantime, be sure to check out our TikTok, our Twitter. Check all of our pages out. Give them a follow, give them a sub as we continue to try to grow this thing.
Absolutely, and as always, if you are watching us on the Yankee and the Brit, thank you guys so much, by the way, Yankee and the Brit, for hosting, a snippet of our show. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys for helping us out and hooking us up with StreamYard as well. Make sure you click on the sub button of Yankee and the Brit. Support them. They're trying to grow. And if you are watching us and you're one of the avid viewers of Yankee and the Brit, make sure you click on the link in the description below and hit the subscribe button on our channel, because we are also trying to grow our podcast. As always, thank you all so much for supporting and listening and watching, and we will catch you guys next time.